कथामृतम् तप्तजीवनम् कविभिरीरितम् कल्मषापहम् श्रवणमङ्गलम् श्रीमदाततम् भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जना. With the devotees at Dakshineshwar. In the last class, we were reading that section of the Gospel where Sri Ramakrishna speaks of the various types of samadhi which he experiences in his life. As he mentioned, sometimes I feel the rise of spiritual current inside me as though it were the creeping of an ant. Sometimes it feels like the movement of a monkey jumping from one branch to another. Again, sometimes it feels like a fish swimming in water. Only he who experiences it knows what it is like. In samadhi, one forgets the world. So we saw that in the last class that this actually entails the rising of the Kundalini Shakti, which has been mentioned in our scriptures. And he mentions the last line, in samadhi one forgets the world, that when the Kundalini rises to the Sahasrara, the highest point, then one becomes identified with his object of meditation. The distinction of the three, dhyana, dhyata, dheya, the meditator, the object of meditation, and the process of meditation. So these are the three distinctions which we have when we are meditating. Even when my mind is fully concentrated, all the distractions has fallen off, but still I am aware of these three. I am aware of myself, I am aware of the object of my meditation, and the process of meditation, which is connecting these two. I am aware of these three. So, the scripture says that what is samadhi? When this triputi bheda happens. When at last the idea that I am meditating is no more there. I become one with the object of meditation. How it happens? As we said, that because of the dissolution of the ego. It is the ego which creates the sense of me and thou, me and the Lord. When the ego falls off, how the ego falls off? As we said, that when my mind gets focused, we will find all other distractions starts falling off. Even the bodily feeling starts falling off. When I am fully concentrated, I may forget my hunger, thirst, these are the tiredness, these are the bodily feelings. I may forget them. But the last thing to fall off is the sense that ego, a part of the mind, is always holding onto that ego. The sense that I am this limited body-mind complex, my association with the body-mind complex, generating the ego. It requires a small portion of our mind, a basal remnant of our mind is always connected with that. When our meditation becomes very intense, even that falls off. And that speaks of the dissolution of the ego, where one merges with the object of his meditation, becomes one with the object of meditation. And that's the state where one forgets even the world. One is in samadhi, the highest state, where the mind has as if merged with the absolute. After saying that, the next thing which Sri Ramakrishna is saying, with which we start our discussion today, is that when the mind comes down a little, I say to the Divine Mother, Mother, please cure me of this. I want to talk to people. This is very important. That when a sadhaka goes to the state of that nirvikalpa samadhi for the first time, what has happened? As we told so many times, that there is a way the mind evolves. For us, it's so difficult to keep the mind focused in one thought. Why? Because my mind is full of distracted thoughts. When I try with all my effort to keep the mind fixed in one thought, it is possible for me to keep the mind fixed in one thought for a while, for a few moments, I find it breaks very easily. All other thoughts comes and distracts me from my object of meditation. So in the language of yoga, these are called sarvarthata ekagrata. That I'm trying to keep my mind ekagra, but sarvarthata, all the distracted thoughts are coming and breaking my meditation. Why it happens? Because the subconscious mind is full of those distractions. They bubble up, and with a willful focus which I am trying to create with the help of that one thought, it is something very, very weak compared to all the upsurges of the subconscious mind. It is very weak compared to that. So it easily breaks the meditation. Then what's the way out? That can I never meditate? No, we can. We have to go on meditating till my mind gets gradually. If at the beginning, again and again, the distracted thoughts will come and break my meditation. But if I go on endeavoring, my ekagra vritti will start concentrating my mind, and the sarvarthata will start getting washing off. That example which we give again and again, it's of a cup full of impure liquid. Now as it is filled to the brim, now if I pour pure water into that cup, what will happen? The impurities will get washing off. They will spill over. The impurities will get diluted. And a time will come when the cup is full of pure water, all the turgid contents have been washed away. So that's the way we concentrate our mind to that ekagra vritti. A time comes when the habitual state of my mind becomes ekagra, because all the distractions have washed away. Now that's not the end. After that, when I'm still focusing my mind, what happens? At the beginning, though my mind is ekagra, but we will find there is a bandwidth. The mind, the thought, that one thought is coming, and then there is a gap between the two ekagra vrittis. It is not that intense. There's a difference between dharana, this dhyana, and at last comes samadhi. When you have attained the state of dharana, your mind is already ekagra. What is the difference between dharana and dhyana? These ekagra vrittis are rising and falling without any distraction, but there is a small gap between two successive thoughts. But when my mind becomes intensely concentrated, this gap, as if the frequency increases, the gap reduces. And then what happens? As we told, that the mind cannot hold to one thought. When you have intensely one thought, it collapses. It collapses, and the mind collapses for the time being, taking you beyond the mind. That's the realization in the nirvikalpa samadhi. When the mind has collapsed, you are one with the absolute. But it cannot continue here in this state for long. For the first time, when one enters into the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, he again comes back. Why? Now, very interesting, as in the beginning, the subconscious mind was full of sarvarthata. Ekagrata, I was trying consciously to keep my mind focused in one thought. Now, my mind is full of ekagra vritti. I have already washed off the sarvarthata. And I have, through my assiduous practice, went to the state of that nirodha. The mind has been suppressed. But the subconscious mind is full of that ekagra vritti. they rise and again bring me back from that arrested state, the Nirodha state. Now there's a question. That someone who has went to that state of that Nirvikalpa Samadhi, now he may aspire to be in that state alone because it's an intense bliss. So what he will do, whenever the Ekagravritti rises to break his Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he will again try to go to that arrested state. So the first time when you are going to that Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it is called Savija Nirvikalpa Samadhi. It is Nirvikalpa along with the seed. The seed of Ekagravritti is still there. Most of the sadhakas, they want to get totally absorbed, merged in the Absolute. So they will try again and again to go to that state. Then what will happen? The state of Nirodha, that will become more and more habitual state. And the Ekagravritti will start getting washed off. Just the same way it happened in the beginning, Sarvarthata was washed off, Ekagrata was saturating the mind, and now Ekagrata is getting washed off, and this Nirodha state is saturating the mind. A stage will come when this Ekagrata Vritti has been washed off, and this arrested state alone remains. And then what will happen? The mind cannot continue in that suppressed state for long. Even in the gospel it is mentioned, a sadhaka in that state, who has went to that state, where the mind is not coming down from Nirvikalpa Samadhi at all, at the most 21 days, he will leave and then his body will fall off. And he attains that Atyantika Mukti. That's the ultimate liberation he attains. But here this line is very important. When the mind comes down a little, Sri Ramakrishna is not just like an ordinary sadhaka. He is an avatar. He won't prefer to again go to that state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi and try to wash off his Ishtavritti. Because he has come down, avatara means avatarana, out of this unbound compassion for the humankind. The Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is being aspired by the aspirants because of the intense bliss. They want that. When we find Swami Vivekananda, when he went to that state for the first time, what he is praying to Ramakrishna? He is saying that, just bless me that I remain in that state. If I come down a little, just for the sustenance of the body, I may have a little food, and again I go back to that state. That's what happens with anyone, because it's such an intense bliss. They want to be in that state. But here we find this remarkable thing in the life of an avatar. Just to help the humankind out of this ignorance. They don't want to merge in the Absolute. They want to come down and stay in the state of this Ekagra with Ishtavritti, so that they can relate to the world, because the mind is still there and can instruct the humankind in the way of liberation. So now you will find that what Sri Ramakrishna is saying is very interesting. When the mind comes down a little, I say to the Divine Mother, Mother, please cure me of this. I want to talk to people. So he doesn't want to go from the Savija Nirvikalpa state to the Nirvija Nirvikalpa state. Willingly he keeps it in the Savija Nirvikalpa state to come down again and again with small, trivial desires. If you go through the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you will find that Sri Ramakrishna, when he is in Samadhi, either by taking God's name he is coming down, or even some silly, small resolutions he will take. I want to drink water. I want to have a little food. All these small desires with which he is forcefully dragging his mind down, so that he can interact with the people and instruct them to on the way of liberation. If you read the Gospel, that's a wonderful thing. There's such 5 volumes of Sri Ramakrishna's talks. Nowhere you will find he is asking, how are you? How is your family? This worldly talk, not a single. That constant, there are days where he is conversing for 17, 18 hours. You will find. There are days. In the morning there was a session, evening there is a session, constantly speaking, but constantly he is speaking in that of God and God alone. It's something wonderful. He's never coming down to that worldly plane of talk. Only just his existence is to illumine the humankind in the way of the spiritual evolution. So that's how nicely he's saying. That when the mind comes down a little, I say to the Divine Mother, Mother, please cure me of this. I want to talk to the people. I don't want to curing of what? Of this nirvikalpa state. I want to come down and relate to the people so that he can instruct them on the way of spiritual journey. None but the Ishwar Kotis can return to the plane of relative consciousness after attaining Samadhi. Some ordinary men attain Samadhi through spiritual discipline, but they do not come back. But when God himself is born as a man, as an incarnation, holding in his hand the key to others' liberation, then for the welfare of humanity, the incarnation returns from Samadhi to consciousness of the world. So that's what? That's the unconditional compassion which enables them to return. That's why Swamiji says that what is the sign of a real spiritual aspirant? That you will find there is no hankering for any selfish gains, no worldly gain. If we find someone is selling religion, someone has, that's why even in the gospel in some place, Sri Ramakrishna has warned us, if you say someone has placed a signboard, someone is selling religion, don't believe. Because only a realized soul can instruct. And he can instruct only because of that unbound compassion coming down from a state where he has no interest just to help out mankind. So religion cannot have any such price tag. It is just from that unbound compassion they come down to help out the humanity from this quagmire of ignorance. So that's the wonderful thing which Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. So this, when he comes down with his companions. He is mentioning them as Ishwar Kotis. Ishwar Kotis, these terms are mentioned in our scriptures. The Jiva Koti. Jiva Koti is like the ordinary human being. Ishwar Kotis are the special ones. That they have that capacity to come down from the state of that Nirvikalpa Samadhi to this physical plane of existence, but not to the worldly plane. They remain always in God consciousness. Their mind is always in that God consciousness. That's the habitual state. That's the way that for us, the worldly way of living is the habitual state. For such person, this God consciousness is the habitual state. They can easily go from that state to the state of that absolute. But they never do that. They have the power to keep the mind to the level of that God consciousness so that can relate to the world and help the humanity from the way out of this ignorance. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. It was the day of the new moon. Gradually night descended and dense darkness enveloped the trees and the temples. A few lights shone here and there in the temple garden. The black sky was reflected in the waters of the Ganges. The master went to the veranda south of his room. A spiritual mood was the natural state of his mind. The dark night of the new moon, associated with the black complexion of Kali, the Divine Mother, intensified his spiritual exaltation. Now and then he repeated Om and the name of Kali. So this is the thing. The entire world becomes a suggestion for enkindling the divine and divine alone. So their mind is just like the dry matchstick. Sri Ramakrishna himself gives this example in the gospel, that for a man of spiritual realization, as there is no desires, The desires are like the moisture that dampens the matchstick. The desires, he has all. He has got rid of all of them. So he's a dry matchstick. It's not moistened by the worldly desires. So a little flash, immediately it enkindles the spiritual awareness and spiritual awareness alone. So let's see, the world becomes a suggestion. For us, the world is always a suggestion for all the sunset entanglements. And for such a person, the same world is, they're reacting in a total different way. That becomes a suggestion for their spiritual illumination. The new moon night, the darkness which is being reflected in the water of Ganges, makes him full of the complexion of the Mother Kali. And that makes him engrossed in the contemplation of the Mother and Mother alone. That's what's being indicated by the author of the Gospel. He lay down on a mat and whispered to M, Master, tell me, which do you like better, God with form or the formless reality? M, Sir, nowadays I like to think of God without form, but I am also beginning to understand that it is God alone who manifests himself through different forms. Master, will you take me in a carriage someday to Matisil's garden house at Belghoria? When you throw puffed rice into the lake there, the fish come to the surface to eat it. Ah, I feel so happy to see them play sport in the water. That will awaken your spiritual consciousness too. You will feel as if the fish of the human soul were playing in the ocean of Satchidananda. In the same manner, I go into an ecstatic mood when I stand in a big meadow. I feel like a fish released from a bowl into a lake. So in these few words, so many things are there. The first, you see, Sri Ramakrishna asks M that what you like, God with form or God without form. Sri Ramakrishna is one of the very great characteristic of his life was he never used to disturb others' faith. That whatever is your faith, well and good. From there, you try to start your journey. He used to never contradict others' faith. As we find when Naren came to Sri Ramakrishna, in his initial youthful enthusiasm, at that time he was from Brahmo Samaj, he will try to convince all in the worship of the formless aspect of the divine, as was preached by the Brahmos. We find that Swami Brahmananda, that as a young boy known as Rakhal, he also was a member of Brahmo Samaj. But because of his association with Sri Ramakrishna, he started visiting the temple. And Naren, finding that, is admonishing him, scolding him. And then Sri Ramakrishna came to know about it. Sri Ramakrishna then took Naren to his side and told, in Bengal very nice, Karo bhav noshta korte nahi. That don't just contradict, destroy the bhava, the spiritual fervor, the feelings with which one is proceeding. Don't try, and we find the same thing when by his touch, and that Naren also developed that capacity. By his touch, he could bring spiritual contemplation in others. In the life of Swami Abhedananda, it happened. By touching Abhedananda, he took him to a spiritual a realization. And Sri Ramakrishna came to know, and he immediately again scolded Naren that you have, as if, what you have done? You have destroyed the child in the mother's womb. It was to take birth, and you have destroyed it. Why he's saying that it is just like that. A bhava is evolving. It is about to take birth, and you, by contradicting it, is as if destroying it. So this is a wonderful thing. Seeing, first he is asking him. It is not that Sri Ramakrishna have to ask, he knows. But still, to confirm. He is asking. And then when he says that I like the God without form, but nowadays I have understood that yes, that by coming in your association, I've understood that the worship with the form is also okay, but my choice is without form. And immediately we find Sri Ramakrishna is instructing him in those lines. He is not speaking of go to the Mother Kali temple. Let's go to this Moti Shil's garden. So there, even now, from training center, we are taken, that lake is still there. And nowadays also that same practice is there. No one catches fish there. So the fishes there are all fearless. As they are never disturbed, they are fearless. So when you give some grains, they come to almost to take the grains from your hand. If you are holding the cereals or grains in your hand, they will take it from your hand. They will jump on the surface, take it from your hand. So it's still they have maintained that same thing which used to be there in those days. So this in those Moti Shil's garden, so he's saying, let us go. Why? That there you will find that as you don't believe in you don't as such can appreciate the worship of divine in particular form. So, but you have to hold on to the divine. So this type of practice will help you to meditate on the formless aspect. What's that? That you are the Atman, but the absolute reality is the Brahman. Atman is as if, as long as it is not merging in the absolute, it is as if floating in the ocean of this unbound consciousness, non-local consciousness. So this is a type of upasana. These are called upasana, approaching. It's not the reality, it's also duality. It also speaks of duality, that I am like a fish, an individual, and the absolute reality is something like the ocean. And I am just having my boundless movement, free movement everywhere without any restriction. The duality is still there. But this helps one to gradually, that cleanse one's mind and go to the absolute. So these are called in our scriptures as upasana. That Advaita is a realization. Even no one can say that I am an Advaitist as a practitioner. Even an Advaitist, when he says I am Brahman, the idea of I is there, the idea of Brahman is there. I am Brahman. The idea of this amness hasn't dissolved. Even what he's saying, that speaks of duality. The duality cannot be resolved. Just the way I cannot jump out of my shadow. Can I get rid of my shadow? No. As long as I'm in this phenomenal existence, as long as I have not went to that realization, I cannot jump out of that ego. It is always there with me. Then how to proceed in the spiritual journey? It has to be dualistic. All the practices are dualistic. It may be meditation on the form, it may not be meditation on the form, but still it is dualistic. But this helps to cleanse the mind. Upasana, the word upa means near, asana means sitting or dwelling. So sitting or dwelling near the ideal. Just as in mathematics, limit of x where x tends to infinity, if for all practical purpose is considered as infinity. It's not infinity, it is tending to infinity. But it is considered what limit of x where x tends to infinity is equal to infinity. So that's the idea of upasana. That still I am within the limit. But through my thought process, I'm trying to think of something which is beyond the limit. So it is x is tending to infinite. And it is, for practical purpose, infinite and infinite alone. So that is the meaning of upasana. Going near. I haven't become one with it. I am approaching it. Upasana. So this sitting near, drawing near the divine truth. So what's the purpose? So through this process, through this visualization, what's happening? That all other worldly thoughts have been cleansed off. I am keeping my mind in that high thought that I am the soul which is just floating freely in the ocean of bliss. So this thought helps to cleanse the mind, purify the mind. And at last, the last thing to fall off is the ego. Through gradual purification, at last the ego also will fall off. So these practices, as he told that he believes it doesn't have preference for form, Sri Ramakrishna is just taking him there to help him as per his bhav. Jamon bhav, tamon lav. So these are the words of Sri Ramakrishna, simple words. But just see how he's practicing it. He's taking aim there so that it can help him by seeing that. That's what he sees, and then he goes back and meditates on that. So that will be helping him. So that's what he's saying, that that will awaken your spiritual consciousness too. What will awaken his spiritual consciousness? When you throw puffed rice into the lake there, the fish come up to the surface to eat it. Oh, I feel so happy to see them play sport in the water. You will feel as if the fish of the human soul were playing in the ocean of Satchidananda. In the same manner, I go into an ecstatic mood when I stand in a big meadow. So after all spiritual illumination comes to the process of awe. What is this awe? This is a human faculty. Nowadays, in schools, when I was here in Victoria, I haven't seen that. But in New South Wales, a class is allocated for religious studies, especially in the primary level. The weekly one class is allocated for religious studies. The students can opt which religion they would prefer, and it's something. The teachers are all volunteers from the various denominations, churches and denominations. They volunteer. They come. And as per the choice of the student, they go and just instruct those two students, teach those students the basics of the religion. But nowadays, there's a big group is there whose parents say that no, for my child, no religion. We don't prefer any religion. So what those students will do for the religious study class, they cannot be just left free. So those who don't want religion, for them there is this class on moral studies. It's moral studies as if it is equivalent to religion. But moral studies is good. It's not something bad. But what's lacking there, where I try to understand everything through rationality, I forget one thing. What am I forgetting? That I will be an irrational person if I deny the fact that as a human being, we all have that faculty called awe, A-W-E, awe. That we always try to relate to something which is much larger than life. It's a human faculty. I cannot stifle it. That's why when a small child, you may not teach him religion. But what he does, throughout the day you will find to make market out of it, to really make a business out of this child's awe faculty. What's there? There's a lot of cartoons. So many cartoons. Nowadays, you will find these animated movies, all the cartoons. The child just gets so absorbed in it. And if you just see what it all speaks of, all the things which they're doing, nothing is rational. Spider-Man, just like a spider climbing this building. Does it in any way speaks of rationality? No. What the child is doing, he's totally hooked to it. Why? Because of that faculty. That I want to relate something which is larger than life. In our scriptures they say, Sa anantaya kalpate. That as a human being, I can never think myself as a limited being. That as a human being, I have so many limitations. I cannot climb the wall just like the spider. Immediately I imagine a character and I identify with it. You go to this Kmart, you will find for the children, there are these costumes of this Spider-Man. Why? The children want to be the Spider-Man. They want to wear those costumes and feel that, yes, I have become the Spider-Man. Want to identify with that. want to identify with something which is larger than life. You can never stifle it. That's the reason for which whenever we get bored with our day-to-day life, day-to-day work, we take a few days off. Where we go? This like what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. In front of these mountains, or we go to the forest, or we go to some ocean, see the vastness, and we forget ourselves. We as if lose ourselves, like that fish we have as if plunged in that ocean. Why? The same thing, that we cannot think ourselves limited. Something within us wants to relate to something which is much, much bigger than life. This awe faculty speaks of religion. In all the religion, read the life of all these divine incarnations. Why it attracts us? Because there is a prophet soul within me which is saying, you are not limited. You are limitless. You are boundless. And that finds, and what you say this, and it finds expression through those lives. And that's why we are drawn towards it. We want to be identified with it. And all the religions you will find, this with all its myths, mythologies, they are not something useless. It's all the product of that human's awe faculty. In the name of rationality, if you curb it, just moral studies you go for. With rationality, I try to understand everything. What happens? The awe faculty has not been taken care of. Then what happens? If the awe faculty if it is starving, you cannot starve that faculty. If you starve that faculty, it will beget perversions. It has to find expression. As you have not given a positive channel, through negativity, it will find a perverted way of expression. How? In Swami Vivekananda's one of his lecture, very interesting thing, he was talking of renunciation. He was speaking of some he was speaking of this Advaita Vedanta, that at last we are all one with the Absolute. This is the ideal he was speaking of. This is the idea which he was speaking of. And suddenly someone from the audience stood up and told, Swamiji, you speak of your oneness with the Absolute, but in your practice you all worship idols. And Swami Vivekananda started laughing. He was smiling. And then he addressed that person and said, what, you also are idol worshippers? And that person replied, how come? How come I am an idol worshipper? We don't worship idols. Then Swamiji's reply was interesting. He told, why? You young man, don't you kneel down in front of a young lady and say you are an angel? Is it not an idol worship? So he's saying something wonderful. Just see, for any that we all know, we have all went through that stage in the state of puberty, these teenagers. You'll find when they see the others opposite sex, they do feel there's an angel. What they forget, that they're like an ordinary human being, like me or you. In their mind, all sorts of imaginations are there that is attributed to that character, and they think there's something greater than life. And it do leads to some infatuations. We cannot deny it. See, this awe faculty is bound to take some, its channel. You cannot stifle it. And these infatuations can lead to disasters, which we see so much in our everyday news you open. So much of crime, everything is related to that. Not only that, you will find that so-called all the terrorist fundamentalism is totally based on using your awe faculty in a negative way. It's not that only those who are poor, just to give some money, they have been brought to all those terrorist activity. It's not the truth. You will find really highly educated, qualified persons are subscribing to that type of ideology. Why? Because only the rational mind was fed. With that, they might have become doctors and engineers. But their awe faculty was never taken care of. So it's very easy to exploit them. You say that you fight for this ideal, hold on to this ideal, think of this as the only God, And for this cause, if you die, you go to heaven. Just see, again you are relating to that awe faculty. You go after death, you attain a state. So you have again exploited that awe faculty to take in a negative way. All the religions what has done? They knew very well this awe faculty is there and it has to be fed in a positive way if it has to integrate our personality. And just see in the life of Ramakrishna, this is what he's saying, that when I get into an ecstatic mood, when I stay in the meadow, as a small child it has happened. When he was passing through that paddy fields, there was just a little puffed rice in a part of the dhoti, the cloth, the loin cloth which he was wearing. It was quite long. He took a portion of it. That was in those days, that was the practice. The mother would just tie a few puffed rice in the loin cloth which the child is wearing, so that whenever it feels hungry, it can just eat that puffed rice. So he was eating that puffed rice from the loin cloth in which the mother most probably has packed, and was going down the paddy fields. And suddenly he looked, the sky has started becoming dark. The layers of cloud, because there was a wind and the clouds were forming layers. It was getting more and more dark. And then on the dark background, suddenly the white cranes came flying. That seeing that magnanimous, that wonderful panorama, for the first time he went to that state of samadhi. He fell down, all the puffed rice was scattered. The others came and thought that most probably he's sick. But that was his first as such experience of samadhi. So this is how this awe faculty in a wonderful way. Nowadays we are just sitting in front of this screen. We forgot to go out to the nature and enjoy the wonderful beauty of the nature, to relate to something much bigger than life. And that itself speaks of spiritual illumination. If you get a taste for that, your awe faculty is fed in a positive way. You won't starve for it. It will not get the scope to channelize through all those destructive infatuations and destructive ways. Swami Vivekananda also had the same thing. He was going to Raipur. As a young boy, his father was for his job, he was transferred to Raipur in Madhya Pradesh. And when he was going in a carriage, this bullock cart, and on the way, it so happened that he saw the two mountains, the peaks of the mountains were as if meeting each other. They were as if joining each other. It was very high. And just at the point of their junction, there was a huge beehive. Seeing that wonderful vision, that how that life finds expression in this entire world, this magnificent way of this working of the Lord. Even Swamiji went to that at a type of transportation, type of samadhi. If you read this, the practice of presence of God, the brother Lawrence's life, you will find there also he says that for the first time that he also had a spiritual illumination. How? That in the winter, after the fall, when again the leaves were coming back, that a hidden life force, it's not seen, nothing visible. Suddenly all the branches are becoming green. How the divine is working through this creation. Seeing that took him to that transportation. So the nature can be a wonderful way of relating to the higher dimension of our existence, can take us to that ecstasy. And that's such a positive way of satiating our awe faculty, which has to be, as we were saying. And otherwise, you know it for certain, it is in this present world. As we have stifled that awe faculty from the very childhood, the child doesn't get any scope to relate to that we say that artificial intelligence will come and take over us. There is no need for that. Nowadays, the young generation, they themselves look like artificial intelligence. No expression, no emotions working, nothing. Constantly they are with these gadgets, and they appear to be so much without emotions. And that's why you find there's so much of this sense of purposelessness in life. So much of violence, this young violence, that government has to think of this vilifications laws for these young ones. Can there be reformation from top to bottom just by having that some laws I can discipline them? No. I think it's a time where we really think that how to nurture this awe faculty, and for that we did not have to devise anything new. It's already there. If we recognize our perennial wisdom in the form of all the religions, that itself is already there. There's nothing new we have to devise. That itself can help us again to get back that culture where we get a decent human being. Now the decency has gone. The head of the states are the most indecent person. Everywhere we see. In the most irresponsible way they are behaving. Everywhere there is war, tension. Why? Because the importance, the significance of religion, and which helps us to nurture our faculty, we have forgotten. We, in the name of rationality, we are the most irrational being. That rationality has gone. We don't understand that this is a faculty. It speaks of irrationality. Simply denying the faculty which is. That's why Swamiji used to say that religion is the basic necessity of human being. It's a basic necessity. Just the way I cannot live without water, I cannot live without food, cannot live without air. This religion is there as a basic necessity. Without that, we cannot be an integrated personality. So these words that show that how naturally, that I don't believe in any form of the divine, but their spirituality is there. It can find expression in so many ways. You can just adopt to any of that. And the main thing is that it has to be adopted, some of the way has to be adopted, and we have to relate to that so that we become an integrated personality which does welfare to myself as well to the world. This Atmana Moksha Jagat Hita. So these are the very important, this small ideas in the gospel. The gospel is just not for reading like a novel. It is for Sravana, Manana. Read it and then contemplate. A small paragraph that itself, you can contemplation can throw layers of meaning from in it. And that's why the life of Ramakrishna, there is no need for him to trod on this earth. His entire life, the every breath he takes, the every step he walks is for the good of the humanity. And we should relate to that life with that type of attitude. It's not just reading a history book. It's just a book where each and every word is there for our inspiration. So that's what we have to always understand. So these are all meant for, as we were saying, upasana. It's not speaks of the ultimate realization, but through these visualizations, by relating to our awe faculty, these visualizations helps us to be approaching near the truth. Upasana. And that's the way we can cleanse our mind, integrate our personality, and evolve spiritually to become a complete human being. Spiritual discipline is necessary in order to see God. I had to pass through very severe discipline. How many austerities I practiced under the bell tree. I would lie down under it crying to the Divine Mother, "O Mother, reveal thyself to me." The tears would flow in torrents and soak my body. So that should be that from the childhood, that intensity, that this is the ultimate goal of human life. If this somehow we can understand, then the Tivra Sangvega, the tremendous, that's what in the Yoga Sutra they say, that all the spiritual paths has been spoken of. Now the question is, what's the duration? For such and such course, 3 years is the duration. For master's degree, 2 years is the duration. And you speak of the spiritual path. Do you have any fixed duration? That I will attain that highest illumination in 2 years, 3 years? And there the Yoga Sutra says, tivra sangveganam asanna. The duration cannot be fixed that way. The more intense is your yearning, the quicker is your journey. So what's the intensity of your yearning? Vyakulata. How intensely you yearn for it. That decides your this illumination and the duration of your illumination. So with this we will stop our discussion today. We'll continue. We will find this Sri Ramakrishna's conversations, of course, is each and every line is so meaningful and so full of inspiration that we'll find that in his words, in the succeeding conversation, it continues in those same theme. So we will continue with his succeeding discussion again in the next class. So with this, we conclude our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.